Des here again. We're doing one of our how-tos. This time's berthing. I happen to be on my own. We've got quite a breezy day and we're looking at how do we think about that and how do we berth with quite a bit of breeze to think about. Today we've got the breeze going the way we're going down the aisle, so we've got to be really careful about a couple of bits. When we turn into the aisle, we've got to control the bow, make sure that we're not getting pushed down onto the other boats. And when we actually go to reverse into our berth, thinking about where do we put that bow and how to keep it under control, so we reverse gently in with a nice bit of way on to get those lines on. We're going to do it with and without a bow thruster, so we'll show you without a bow thruster first because not every boat's got one and that would be quite handy. We're on a single out drive. It's got quite a bit of grunt in and out of gear. I've already tried to knock the cameraman off his feet. Stern's quite abrupt and so's the head. So we've just got to be thinking about using lots of neutral, wheel before gear. So we'll go down, think about the wind, turn in, reverse up. So two key bits. As we're approaching where we turn, we want to stop the boat before we turn. And that might sound a bit counterintuitive, but if I turn with the boat still going forward, I'll slide, and the boat on my starboard side is actually called blitz. So we don't really want to hit blitz, that would not be good. But as I come up towards the space I'm going to turn, I'm going to stop the boat. Then it'll be wheel over, into gear, control that bow, push the bow around so it's nicely upwind, slide along the aisle in a similar fashion to when we left. And again, lots and lots of neutral. We don't want to be gaining momentum. That just gets us into trouble. And one more little click, just want to get there. And you can see out the window, we're not slowing down. That wind is pushing us down the aisle. Doesn't look it, but it's actually quite a stiff breeze today. So we're nearly at the hull, and I'm just going to have helm straight, little click of a stern, and that started to slow me. Now I'm going to put the wheel to starboard first and have a little click of a stern, and that's slowing me and starting to turn my bow. Wheel all the way over to port, that little click, just enough so that I'm getting a turning movement but not much ahead. And as we turn, you can see the wind on the water, nice little gasp. All this side is quite dangerous, just keeping that bow nicely up. And again, 90% of the time, I'm in neutral. So we're just going to slide along here. Again, we're using the angle of the boat to compensate for the amount of wind. The more wind, the steeper the angle. But when we get to our berth, we're going to use this wind as our friend because we need our bow well over to starboard to reverse in. So I'm just straightening up a wee bit. We're going to put our bow over towards the rather nice, shiny, sharp anchor on the boat that's more or less opposite where we are. And that will just allow us to then reverse up towards the wind. It'll click that way first. And now I'm going to deliberately put a little bit of wheel to starboard and a click ahead to make my boat go downwind. So boat's going nicely downwind. And we can see the anchor coming into view. Now we better stop before we get there. So we're going to put the wheel over to port, little click astern, and that will slow me down and pivot me. I'm going to straighten the wheel for a second and have just another one of astern. That stops my forward momentum. Boat's still turning from the spin I gave. Another little click now. Now we're actually very gently moving astern. And now I've got all the time in the world. The wind is actually taking me off the berth, which is fine. I'm actually going to have a wheel to starboard and a click ahead. That just allows me to line up. Now I can wheel over. Let's bring that stern in. And now I've got to be very careful because the bow is going to starboard at the moment. So I put the wheel over to starboard and a little click of stern. That just allows me to bring the bow back to where I want. Straighten up the wheel a bit, keep going back. It's a bit of a funny shaped pontoon. It's got a cutout at the end, so I have to be careful. And then just as I get here, little click ahead, wheel hard over, and one little click, and that just pushes my stern in. Leave the helm. Walk down, there's my cleat, nicely round. Make it off on my boat. And you can see that tension on the lines just started to bring the bow in, so I can step ashore now. Walk gently down, hand on the boat, line up. And as that wind increases again, it's just going to continue berthing the boat, and then I can put the rest of the lines on. So we're just doing the berthing exercise with the wind blowing us off our berth, me on my own a second time, but this time I've got the added bonus of a bow thruster. So key thing is make sure it's on, and don't turn it on too early because they all time out, and it'll be a bit of a disaster if it timed out just at the moment you actually needed it. So make sure the bow thruster's on. If you end up having to go in and out a couple of times because you didn't get it right, turn it off when you're in a safe spot and then turn it back on, because otherwise it will, at the crucial moment that you need it, turn itself off. Been there. Okay, so we'll go down the aisle, get ourselves nice and stopped, turn in, control that bow, do a little bit of thruster to make it easier, onto the berth. Okay, so just approaching our turn point. Good practice is again, bring the boat almost to a halt. And that's looking good. And now I can obviously use the wheel to bring the bow around. And if I'm not happy and I don't want to gain too much forward momentum, I can have a little bow thrust as well. And that really helps the boat spin. And when you're on 31 foot of single engine, if the wind gets the bow, having a bow thrust is a really nice position to be in. Nice little cross breeze. I think the wind's picked up a little bit. Always the way when you go to moor. And again, we're just going to keep that bow nicely up using the engine. The engine's far more powerful than the bow thruster, but we've got it if we need it. So as we get all the way down, again we're going to use the same technique, but rather than have to deliberately force the boat downwind to bring it back up, we can use this little cheat stick to make life just that little bit easier. So I'm just going to bring her to a halt, and then same, just a little push of the bow downwind, but now that little click of bow thruster just makes that easier because I'm not having to add momentum. Ready with my stern. One more just to take me round. Where the bow thruster is fab is if I haven't got that all spot on and I'm not quite in the right spot for the hold, and I'm a bit far over. As I come astern, the problem with just using the engine is it makes the bow swing quite dramatically. But this time I've got the added advantage that I can just stop the bow wherever I wish. Click at the stern, straighten the boat up, and again, remember the bow thruster makes both ends of the boat work. So my bow thruster across brings the stern out, a little bit too much that time, just a touch to slow the bow down there. Another little click of a stern. Bring that stern in, and this is where if you haven't got a bow thruster it's a bit of a pain, because as you bring the stern in the bow goes out. So now, with a bit of luck, ooh, missed that. A little click now just to straighten me up and stop the boat. But where it's nice now, bow's moving away, I can just stop it with that thruster and then step off as before. Line on. Now, if I'm not comfy with where the boat is in the berth, it's all twisted, I can walk back to the helm and bring the bow back on. Luckily for me, the wind's just kind of pushed me round a little bit and the bow's quite close.